Good evening. It's a late night meandering. I'm just looking over the last year, but perhaps looking at maybe more than the last year and looking at how things have changed. And in doing so, I'm looking at various pieces of information that come in from various books. I always think that that the piece of information that you are most ready to take in is just within arm's reach. In other words, a book. So it's usually right here if you're looking for it, and you have to be ready to read it and see it. And someone sent me a clip of a talk that was given by, let me put my glasses on so I can read my notes. This was a very interesting talk. Now, I sent it to a lot of people. Probably they won't have read it. They won't have looked at it. It was a video, and it was by a woman, let me say, Elizabeth Johnston, and she actually has branded herself as the activist mommy, and she was a mother. This is a special woman. This is not your ordinary mommy, okay? She is activist in that she has made herself educated on what's actually happening in our society. When I say that I've looked back over the last year, I'm looking back over the last lifetime, and I'm looking at how things have got worse. How can we have gotten to a situation where a judge in America, lots of things that happened in America, because that's my source of information a lot of the time. This lady, Elizabeth, is an American lady, and she is out there and she's trying to get people to realize what's happening. And she quotes, in this talk, she quotes a writer called Cleon Skousen. Cleon Skousen wrote a book called The Naked Communist. Now, I haven't actually read this book, but in the book she refers to this book, and which I believe was written back in 1963. That's a long time ago. And she cites Clausen, who's probably dead by now, but she cites him as quoting from an agenda that was set up by, let me move some stuff here, that was a Marxist communist agenda. And this is funny because coincidentally I saw a lot of these things that I'm going to read out to you now as being the goals that were cited by Cleon Skousen in The Naked Communist. I will try to get that book. If anybody has it and they don't want it, and can send it to me, that would be terrific, because I don't have a good access to books. It's not for the sake of a couple of bucks, but that would be a great book to have. He cites in that a communist agenda for infiltrating our society and making our society go downhill. I hate to get all religious and start quoting as if I'm some kind of religious preacher, which of course I'm not. I just tend to think of good and evil, but what we really are looking at is we're looking at a fight, it's a battle between good and evil. And when you look at some of the rules that are in this agenda, this Marxist agenda, which apparently had 45 goals. There were 45 goals in this Marxist communist, whatever you want to say. I tend to think of it as on the side of evil. I've said this many times, how I notice that nowadays, especially here in the Philippines, which is where it seems, maybe I'm just taking more notice now, but I notice that when there is a movie which is, or made for TV movie, which is a battle between good and evil, evil in its various portrayals and dramatizations and characters, it occupies probably 80% or more of the movie, of the made-for-TV movie, of the series, and each plot is filled with images of evil winning. Now, it's not that I'm a prude, but I don't see things, for instance, I don't see murder as entertainment. I don't see the beating up of women. I don't see that as entertainment. I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch rape as entertainment. It's not entertainment. Surely we should not be portraying scenes, we should not be presenting images of this kind of thing where it seems like it's okay. Now, when you look at some of these examples of the goals in this 45 goal agenda, this is back to 1963 when all of this was written, and according to this lady it was written into the Constitution as something that was to be planned and to be executed. Now just listen to some of these, and if you think back to 1963, which is probably before most of your time, before the time of most of you, to put it in a more correct way, and you think back to all of that time ago, and then think of how things are today, and you will be shocked, you will be amazed, and shocked is a better word. So goal 17 was control of schools. Now you think about how things have changed in a school. Nowadays, teachers are so afraid of doing anything in school. In particular, when you think about kindergarten, if a child falls and hurts themselves, nowadays it's actually politically incorrect. A teacher is on risky ground if he or she hugs that child and comforts them. You're not allowed to do that. So you're not allowed to do so many things which were normal humanitarian things which were in sympathy with a situation or a crisis in which, say, a child needed to be comforted. No, not allowed to do it now. So control of the schools. 19, goal 19, student riots. Make students feel that they can go out and they can make trouble and riot and everything in the name of freedom of speech and movement, and that this is a way of getting out of the control of schools. It's more of the same thing. Goal 20 was infiltrate the press. Well, if you look at how things have been going in, say, America, where the press are being caught out in actually fake news. There is such a thing now as fake news, that we are being presented in what used to be completely respectable bodies of reporting. These great newspapers who had great traditions, and now they're actually siding with politicians. Remember, they used to be quite independent and they didn't side with one or the other, and then gradually that began to change when this goal was being realized. 24. Eliminate laws on obscenity. So what you do is, in the name of free speech and censoring, you have it so that anything goes. And in one particular movie that I watched fairly recently, I watched that there were rebels, there were crooks who were in control, and they had captured people, and one woman was taken and she was kept as a plaything, as a sex slave, and it was graphic. It wasn't bare skin, but the whole thing was open as if it were entertainment, and that is part of the goal. 25, goal 25 was to promote porn. You promote porn, you break down standards of morality. So nowadays people are able to go online. Now I've actually complained on Facebook about the full-on sex act, pornographic images, not still images, I mean the whole thing, and it's sneaked in there, and some people will not bother and they'll look at it and it will get a ton of views or whatever, but we're being led to believe that this is okay, and it's not. So number 26 was to present homosexuality, and let me see, obscenity in books, images of sexuality, of the sex act, porn, all of that, being that it has, as if it has a place in our society, as if that is okay. Actually, that it's okay, that we should all be much more accepting of it, as if it's fine, and that has led to the gender change, and then we had, let me see, about 5 years ago we had this big thing where men who were convinced that they were women. I'm not making any judgments on this, but I'm just trying to look at it in the light of these goals that were set back in the 60s, and you had men dress up as women in the ladies' toilets in some big store, and of course that led to a young girl being molested by such a person in the guise of a woman in the women's toilet. And so women began to be afraid of letting their little girls go into the toilet alone. They'd have to go in with them, and even then they were at risk. And so, but this is supposed to be okay, and some of the big stores actually moved over to saying that this was okay for these men dressed as women going into the ladies' toilet. So they were supposed to, the idea was to infiltrate churches and to stop normal Bible-based religion, and without going into all that's happening in religion, especially the Catholic religion at the moment, with priests are doing what they've been doing for many years, without going into all of that, they were watering down the Bible-based religion, and they were making it into, what was it called? Infiltrate into social religion, and they were changing it so that it was more acceptable to more people. Acceptable. So in other words, this is a battle of spirits. It's a battle of the spiritual health of any person, that instead of adhering to a strict religion, way of life, set of rules which would lead you to be a better person, more responsible, more spiritual, more generous, loving, kind, honest, truthful. Now it's more where it's more of what they probably call a social religion. Now this one was a very real one to me. It was eliminate prayer in school, and all over I haven't been as much aware of it in the UK, say, or in Australia, the other two main societies which I am involved with. But certainly in America, students were stopped having little gatherings together. And let's face it, that was one of the things that Christ taught, was that when two or more are gathered together in my name, then that is especially strong in what was being prayed for. The good, the change, and all of those things that were being prayed for were stronger. That the unity, the union of many people, which is the object of churches, isn't it? That people get together and they pray together, and there is a focus for the prayer. So many times people will talk to the pastor and say, can you offer a prayer for, and then they'll name someone, even themselves and their family. But there is a unity in the prayer, and that was what was always taught in the Bible. And now they're prohibiting prayer, and this is all in the guise of keeping religion from government. It's not true. This one will not affect everyone. If you're not from America, you won't be as familiar with what's called the Constitution. The Constitution, by the founding fathers, that few hundred years ago, when they decided that things were going to be different in society, and they put together what was an extremely spiritual, clever, well thought out way of living, the Constitution, as to how the land, the nation should be governed. And they're now playing down the Constitution. Yes, well, it was okay then, a little bit like they play down the Bible. It was okay then, but it's a little bit old-fashioned now, and it's not so good. This is all part of the idea of actually attacking the very framework of our society as we know it. Let's face it, in the US, it's a familiar thing. In God we trust. In God we trust. So, in order to discredit the Constitution, of course, you have to discredit the founding fathers, who were described as being selfish, and various other stuff which I don't have to go into. But they also discredit the family, and this is very real. A lot of these things I've been guilty of and failed in my lifetime, and it's taken me a long time to come to that point where I'm realizing just how badly I lived this life. And now I'm looking at the idea where they're discrediting the idea of the family as the basic unit, and they're making abortion easy. Now, it's getting harder for them to make abortion easy, because now because of social media, which for all of its faults and for all of its evil, and it's giving of a platform for those who are fighting for evil. It's not so easy to convince someone of abortion now, because, and a few years ago, someone sent me photographs of what an abortion looks like. Not seeing the woman being operated, but when the impeachment of President Trump was in progress, they actually spoke to a doctor for his testimony. And one of the things that he admitted to, confessed to, and felt terrible about, was the fact that for many years he had performed abortions. And sorry if this gets graphic, but it just has to be said that they don't just take out a whole baby which is dead. That's not what happens. They actually dismember this little baby that's inside. And when they've done that, they have to put those pieces of that child to one side, and they have to make sure that that everything is there, that, in other words, nothing has been left behind, which is going to cause illness and death. So there's got to be 2 arms and 2 legs, and you understand just how graphic it would be to have that explained. And it was explained, and you can find that for a doctor in one of the testimonies on the impeachment on YouTube. And it was especially harrowing to listen to that, but something that I felt had to be done. Now, you think about all of these goals that I've mentioned, and you can see it happening in our society. You can see it. There's a sign outside the health centre in Taliban, and it obviously is addressing young girls. It says, when I was your age, I was taking English exams, not contraceptives. Now we've just come so far, and we've lost it to a great extent. And this woman, Elizabeth Johnston, the activist mummy, she's saying, her question to everyone is, who will rise up? Who will fight the evil that's in our midst, and that is causing us to change the way that we have been acting? You would have thought that in our particular case, Beth and I, that it would be so easy for us to convince people just by putting up the videos of the work that we've done, the 40-something houses that we built for people who had no hope, of the people that we've managed to take to the hospital, that we've had to been able to get surgery for. But no, a small concerted group of people who are dedicated to the other side can affect the way that we approach our lives in the negative way, in an extremely negative, destructive way. We've lost 2. We lost, because of the way that we have been challenged, we've lost Michael, the diabetic boy. He died. And now recently the little child that we call Baby Faith died. Whereas when we first found out about Baby Faith, she had had an operation, and we were able to get her in for a second operation, thanks to the good that people were inspired to do and help us on. Now, this is not a solicitation of funds. I'm not doing that. I'm talking about the way that it is. And this is how the evil will come forward and win if no one does anything. If people say it's too hard. Lots of expats have come with the best of intention, and they've tried to help here in the Philippines, and they have been buried in such evil that they've said it's not worth it. But we can't do that. We can't say it's not worth it. It is. It has to be worth it, because what is the expression? What's that saying? What does a good man or a good woman have to do to defeat evil? Nothing. Well, I'm sorry, I've got that wrong. To let evil win, what do we have to do? And to let it win, the answer is nothing. To fight it, we have to take the blows and the hits as well. And that's not always easy. And it's certainly a lot easier to stay at home and watch TV and not go out and help somebody. You can go out wherever you are, you can go out and help somebody. Anytime people tell me that they're losing hope, I tell them, if you don't feel that anybody loves you, go out and help somebody. In whatever way you can. You don't have to be a millionaire able to give away great sums of money. You don't have to do that. You can just, you can mow somebody's lawn. You can clean an old lady's windows. There's any number. You can help take some old person for groceries. You can help someone reach that top shelf when you're in the supermarket. You can do anything that is an outgoing effort to help somebody for no pay. You can do it. You know, Beth and I have almost lost our faith sometimes. We've been close. We've been looking at each other when the tears have been flowing and saying, why are we doing this? And the answer has always been, because we must. Because you must. Our society is being attacked. It's being degraded. It's being put down. And if we don't step up and do something, anything, evil will win, and we can't let it. Whatever your way of looking at this, evil, the dark side, God, the Lord, the devil, Satan, choose your own name. It all amounts to the same thing in my book. You just stand by and let evil have its way. Don't do it. That's a New Year resolution for you. Step up and help somebody. I hope you will. Instead of a foreigner in the Philippines, Happy New Year.